10:15?
Yeah.
Oh, so I'm late. Well, the people on the video can watch me eat. So we have Bible class at 10:15. It's 11:15, so that there's time for the service.
Till 11.
Oh, till 11.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because all our service starts at 11:30, you want more time in between.
Mm-hmm. That's fine. I have to remind Pastor Miller he has to change it on his website though, because it still says Bible class at 10:30. It's a rich chocolate.
Where's everybody? Other people.
Okay, well, we'll get started. And I'll finish this up later. We're at, Pastor Miller did text me on that too. He said Genesis chapter 21. Genesis 21. Hopefully that's right.
Yep.
I apologize to Pastor Poppy when he was here, the last time I was here. He redid the chapter I had done. So.
That's right, we got two different perspectives.
Okay.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So, this morning we have the account, the birth of Isaac, and then we'll see if we can get through the whole chapter. Maybe we'll even get further. I don't think we will. Let's try to cover this chapter today. Why don't we begin with a word of prayer, shall we? Lord God, Heavenly Father, bless us as we look at the account here of Abraham. And today we see how you fulfilled your promise to him in the birth of his son Isaac. Bless us, O Lord, in all that we do and say. May your word enlighten our lives through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. All right, so Genesis chapter 21, verses 1 to 7. Would somebody like to read that? Genesis 21, verses 1 to 7.
The Lord visited Sarah as he had said, and the Lord did to Sarah as he had promised. And Sarah conceived and bore Abraham a son in his old age, at the time of which God had spoken to him. Abraham called the name of his son who was born to him, whom Sarah bore him, Isaac. And Abraham circumcised his son Isaac when he was 8 days old, as God had commanded him. Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born to him. And Sarah said, God has made laughter for me. Everyone who hears will laugh over me. And she said, who would have said to Abraham that Sarah would nurse children? Yet I have borne him a son in his old age.
Okay. So, after all of the preparation for this, this keeps coming up in the chapters previous. God kept promising Abraham who was going to have a son. And Abraham didn't really necessarily believe it. And Sarah especially didn't believe it. If you recall, she laughs. And then the Lord asks, why did you laugh? I didn't laugh. And he says, oh, yes, you did. And so now here it says that the Lord is gracious. And he did as he said. The Lord fulfilled his promise. And Sarah becomes pregnant. Let's see. I think she was 90 years old. Okay, 90 years old. And Abraham was 100. And she has this son. At the time that God had promised. Yes, not just that this happens, but it happens according to the time that God had said it would happen. Okay? And Abraham names him Isaac. Yitzhak. In Hebrew, laughter, or he laughs. Yitzhak. Okay? Well, what a name for a child. You name him for the joy you have, but also probably reminding everyone about the fact nobody could believe that this was going to happen. And so his name is Isaac. And then, of course, it speaks about the fact that as had happened already with Ishmael and with all of Abraham and his workers and his servants and everyone else, all of them had been circumcised. So now, at the 8th day, after Isaac is born, he is circumcised according to the commandment of God. The ritual of the Old Covenant takes place. And then it does say Abraham was 100 years old when his son was born. So, Sarah said, God has brought me laughter. That's sort of an interesting phrase. I wonder, it would be fun here if I could find my Bible program, which of course, there it is. And then I want to go to Genesis chapter 21, verse, what is it, 6? Yeah. But now I want to convert it to the right version. The Hebrew Bible. Genesis 21, verse 6, and Sarah said, Sechach asa li Elohim. Yeah, the word Yitzhak is there sort of, the verb asak, which has in it Yitzhak, the name. So she's sort of echoing Isaac's name when she says, God has brought to me Sechach, laughter. Okay? And so, God has given to me laughter. Okay? So she's sort of, and everyone who hears about this will laugh with me. And there she says, Yitzhak, which is like she's repeating Isaac's name. They will laugh, and it's the same Hebrew word as Yitzhak, Isaac's name. And she added, who would have said to Abraham that Sarah would nurse children? Yet I have borne him a son in his old age. Not only in his old age, but in my old age as well. Okay. So what a blessing here. Okay. Laughter and laugh. Okay. All right. That brings us to the next part then. Longer section, but let's read verses 8 to 13. 8 to 13.
And the child grew and was weaned, and Abraham made a great feast on the day that Isaac was weaned. And Sarah saw the son of Hagar the Egyptian, whom she had born to Abraham, laughing. So she said to Abraham, Cast out the slave woman with her son. The son of the slave woman shall not be heir with my son Isaac. And the thing was very displeasing to Abraham on account of his son. But God said to Abraham, Be not displeased because of the boy and because of your slave woman. Whatever Sarah says to you, do as she tells you. For through Isaac shall your offspring be named. And I will make a nation of the son of the slave woman also, because he is your offspring.
Okay. So now this is sort of interesting here. We have that Isaac grows up and he is weaned, so he starts to eat solid food, I suppose, and this was a cause for celebration. And Sarah looks over and sees the son of Hagar, who is mocking, or it says mocking in this one translation, laughing at, well, he's a kid, I don't know how old he was,
14.
Oh, he was 14. Okay, he's a teen. Not only is he a kid, he's a teenager. This is worse. Okay, he's a teenager. And he's mocking. And so Sarah says, get rid of that woman and her son, for that slave woman's son will never share in the inheritance with my son Isaac. So she just wants Abraham to send them away. Jealousy. Well, of course, one must remember it was Sarah who had the idea in the first place that Hagar should go in with her husband and have a son, or have a child, because Sarah believed she was never going to have a child. So, get rid of him so that he will not share. Driving them out would have had the effect of disinheriting Ishmael, as it says here. The matter distressed Abraham greatly because it concerned his son. Now that's interesting. The custom, and then I'm looking here in the Bible commentary here, the customs of his day, illustrated later, prohibited the arbitrary expulsion of a servant girl's son. Okay? Whose legal status was relatively weak, but still, they weren't supposed to do this, even according to the customs of the day, the laws of the day. But God speaks to Abraham. Well, he says to him, do not be distressed about this. Did we read that far? How far do we go?
That's a 13.
Oh, we only read through the first verses, didn't we? Did you read 11 to 13?
Yeah.
Okay. So the matter distressed Abraham, but God says, don't be distressed. Whatever Sarah tells you, it's okay, because through Isaac your offspring will be reckoned. Well, that's true. The sons of Abraham, the children of Abraham, Isaac and Jacob, that was the promised line. But I will make the son of the maidservant into a nation also, because he is your offspring. So, there's a promise here that even though this is the case, that through Isaac the promise will come, but I'm also going to make this son into a nation, the son of your maidservant, Ishmael. Okay. So verses 14 to 17. 14 to 16. 14 to 16.
Early the next morning, Abraham took some food and a skin of water and gave them to Hagar. He set them on her shoulders and then sent her off with the boy. She went on her way and wandered in the desert of Beersheba. When the water in the skin was gone, she put the boy under one of the bushes. Then she went off and sat down nearby, about a blow shot away, for she thought, I cannot watch the boy die. And she sat there nearby. She began to sob.
Okay, now this is interesting. So, she sends Abraham away. He gives them some food and a skin of water. Well, I suppose it's nice he gave them something, but one thing of water is not going to be enough if you're going to send them out into the desert. True? Not necessarily. What did he expect? Where were they going to get water from? So, he set them on her shoulders and then sent her off with the boy. And she goes and she wanders in the desert of Beersheba. That's in the southern part of Israel, toward the Sinai, toward the real desert. But this is where they're wandering. Now, this is not a good thing. And the water is gone. I don't know how long that took. It probably didn't take long. And she puts the boy under one of the bushes. Now, he's 14 years old. I don't know why but she set maybe in the shade, and she goes off and she cries. because she says, I cannot watch the boy die. Okay, and so she begins to sigh. Now, next, verse 17 to 21. 17 to 21, something like to read that.
And God heard the voice of the boy, and the angel of God called to Hagar from the heaven and said to her, What troubles you, Hagar? Fear not, for God has heard the voice of the boy where he is. Up, lift up the boy, and hold him fast with your hand, for I will make him into a great nation. Then God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water, and she went and filled the skin with water and gave the boy a drink. And God was with the boy, and he grew up. He lived in the wilderness and became an expert with the bow. He lived in the wilderness of Paran, and his mother took a wife for him from the land of Egypt.
Okay. So, interesting here. God hears, God has heard. Verse 17, the word hearing is there. Now, it's interesting. In Hebrew, the word for hearing is shema, and Ishmael's name means God hears. Shema'el, God hears. So, he heard the boy's cries. The angel of God now calls to Hagar. Okay, here's this angel of God, the angel of the Lord. I don't know if you talked about this some in your. Have you? Yeah. This is usually it's considered the second person of the Trinity before the incarnation. This would be, well, we can't necessarily say it's Jesus, but I mean, yes it is, but it's before he comes to earth, but this is God himself appearing in this form. The angel of God comes and calls to Hagar from heaven, and don't be afraid. God has heard the boy cry. Lift him up and take it by the hand, for I will make him a great nation. Okay. And she opens up her eyes, and she saw a well of water. Now, there's interesting here. We're going to get to wells, a couple more wells in just a minute, but this is very interesting. There's a well, and she fills the skin with water and gave the boy a drink. So, there's water there. And God was with the boy as he grew up, and he lived in the desert and became an archer. Okay. He could shoot. And while he was living in the desert of Paran, his mother got a wife for him from Egypt. Okay? Parents often arrange their children's marriages. Now, this is true. But he has a wife. So this is the beginning. Now, Ishmael, Ishmael is one of the people, some of the tribes, the peoples of the Middle East are still descendants of Ishmael, as well as then, of course, you also have Jacob and Esau, which is coming later, and those who are the descendants of Esau. And it's interesting, but some of the disputes of the Middle East are not helped by the fact that these are all brothers fighting with one another, not getting along very well, like the descendants of Ishmael and the descendants of Isaac, the descendants of Jacob and the descendants of Esau. So you've got those things here. But anyway, so Ishmael so this covers a great deal of time, obviously. You know, he's about 14 when Isaac is born, so he's probably 16 or 17 here. And obviously this, it speaks of the boy crying and weeping. This is a more humbled person than the one who was mocking his little brother, if you will. Even as a teenager here, he is, well, of course, he's probably terrified with his mother. We're out here in the middle of nowhere. We're going to die out here in the wilderness. But God hears his cry. Ishmael, God hears. And he brings them to water, and he is with them, and the boy continues to grow. And is finally, he has a wife then. Okay, that brings us to a next section here, and we have Abimelech. Now, I think last week you would have talked about Abimelech and Abraham's sort of mistake there with, is that the one where?
Yes, yes it is.
Yeah, his wife.
Yes.
And he took Sarah by mistake, even though God, for a while he said of Sarah, said, she is my sister. Abraham wasn't honest with Abimelech either. Well, even though some people say that maybe they were indeed related, whether sister is the, no, but it's interesting. And so now we have Abimelech again, who is king. Interesting, the name Abimelech means my father is king. Okay? So here we go with Abimelech. Let's read verses 22 to 26. 22 to 26.
At that time, Abimelech and Phicol, the commander of his army, said to Abraham, God is with you in all that you do. Now therefore swear to me here by God that you will not deal falsely with me, or with my descendants, or with my posterity. But as I have dealt kindly with you, so you will deal with me, and with the land where you have sojourned. And Abraham said, I will swear. When Abraham reproved Abimelech about a well of water that Abimelech's servants had seized, Abimelech said, I do not know who has done this thing. You did not tell me, and I have not heard of it until today.
Okay. So now, the two of them, let's see, 21. Oh, okay, it's not until we get later on that the name of the place. Okay. So, Abimelech and Phicol, the commander of his army. Yeah, so Abimelech's the king, I know, of a region. There were lots of kings around in those days, some of them not having big kingdoms, but anyway, he has enough of a kingdom that he has an army. The word Phicol, it says, is either his name or his title. It appears 60 years later in a similar context, okay? So it might be like it's some kind of official title to a king whose name is. Now, that it appears 60 years later in Genesis 26. Oh yes, Abimelech. Once again, Abimelech and Isaac have this going on. So, in fact, Isaac and Abimelech, this would be a generation later probably, he tries to pull off the same thing as Abraham did. Says, it's my sister. Yeah, okay. That was Rebecca. Boy, these guys. Their personal lives are not, well, it's maybe good for us to remember in Scripture, these are human beings, you know. Their personal lives are not always completely up to snuff, just like often people that we, supposedly are supposed to look up to, their personal lives are not up to snuff either. So, okay, but now Abimelech is coming and he tells Abraham, I see that God is with you in everything you do. So swear to me before God that you will not deal falsely with me or my children or my descendants. Okay. Show to me and the country where you are living as an alien the same kindness I've shown to you. Now this is sort of interesting. It says here, phrases commonly used when making covenants or treaties. Kindness is used here refers to acts of friendship. And these kind of covenants often involved oaths. So swear to me that you will show me the same kindness that I have shown to you. And Abraham said, I swear it. This is like a peace treaty. Now, Abraham isn't a country as such. He's going to be. He's not yet. But he probably has many servants in his family. And he's very powerful. And in that day and age, even though he was a nomadic herdsman, if you will, but he's quite rich. You know, he would be a, not a Bill Gates of that age. Well, maybe somebody, with quite a bit of property and a force to be reckoned with. The fact that earlier on, before, Abraham he helped the kings to rescue Lot, the kings even of Sodom, in those places, rescuing Lot, who had been taken, and so Abraham had enough people with him that he became part of an army that actually engaged in a battle or war against other people. So all these things are going on, and Abraham says, I swear this. But then Abraham complains about a well of water that Abimelech's servants had seized. Obviously, wells were very important things in this day and age.
Well, it's a desert.
It's a desert. And so to have a place where there's water is very important. And so apparently these soldiers of Abimelech had seized this well, and Abraham's flocks and others couldn't use the water, if you will. So he complains. And so Abimelech says he hadn't heard about this until today. If you didn't tell me. Another thing Abraham didn't tell Abimelech, apparently. Okay. International relations or something. I forgot to tell you this. Anyway, he complains. Verses 27. I suppose we can read to the end of the chapter. 27 to 34. Or something like that.
The meaning of these 7 ewe lambs you have set apart by themselves. He replied, accept these 7 lambs from my hand as a witness that I dug this well. So that place was called Beersheba, because the 2 men swore an oath there. After the treaty had been made at Beersheba, Abimelech and Phicol, the commander of his forces, returned to the land of the Philistines. Abraham planted a tamarisk tree in Beersheba, and there he called upon the name of the Lord, the eternal God. And Abraham stayed in the land of the Philistines for a long time.
Okay. So this is in the land, see, this is over toward, Beersheba is sort of over toward the Mediterranean coast, which would have been where the Philistines would have been. Now, if Abimelech, it says he returned to the land of the Philistines. So, maybe Abimelech is a Philistine, or one of those peoples. So they call the place, so Abraham brings these sheep and cattle. They make a treaty. Now, in Hebrew, to make a treaty is an interesting phrase. They said, oh good, it came up. Verse 27. 25, 26, 27. Abraham, so he brings sheep. Abraham brings sheep and goats, and he, let's see, does it say he? Berit, Vekarati, he set apart, and he made a treaty. And the 2 men made a treaty. Now it's interesting, in Hebrew, to make a treaty is to cut a covenant, which has interesting ramifications. But the idea of cutting a covenant, sometimes the way you would show this covenant, what you take an animal and you cut it in two pieces, cut it in half. One person gets half, the other gets the other half. I suppose you can have a meal after, which obviously doesn't be the thing you do, but I mean, you cut a covenant. Now, what's also intriguing about that, though, is the covenant of circumcision involves cutting. And so there's something there, you know, to cut a covenant. So Abraham, and they made a covenant, all right? And what is the meaning? And then Abraham brings 7 lambs, and Abimelech asked Abraham, what is the meaning of these 7 lambs you have set apart? And Abraham replies, accept these from my hand as a witness that I dug this well. And they call the place then Beersheba, which can mean in Hebrew, the word Shabbat is the word we get Sabbath from or something. It's the word number 7 in Hebrew. And so the word beer is the word for well. So the well of the 7, or the 7th well. The well of the 7 makes sense. There were 7 ewe lambs that were given. Okay? So the well of the 7. And because the men had sworn an oath there. So the 7 lambs have an important place to rule, or thing. Okay? And so after the treaty, Abimelech and Phicol, the commander, go back to the land of the Philistines. And Abraham plants a tree, a tamarisk tree, a shrub or small tree that thrives in Arab regions. Its leafy branches provide welcome shade and is probably the unidentified bush under which Hagar put Ishmael. Okay? Place where there's some shade in the desert. And he calls upon the name of the Lord, the eternal God, as it says. And he called upon the name of the Lord. Let's see. Verse 33, and Abraham. And he called upon the name of the Lord, Bashem, El Olam. The God, the name Adonai, or the holy name of God, that word that, you know, we translate it as Lord. It's probably a good way to do it. The Hebrew people never really pronounced this. I don't know if I mentioned this, or maybe Pastor Miller did. They don't ever to this day pronounce that word because it's so sacred. They replace it with the word Adonai, which is a more common word for Lord. And that's where you get, but he called upon the Lord, the name of the Lord, and then he is also El Olam, eternal God, or God of eternity. So, and Abraham stays there for a while, in the land of the Philistines.
So I have a question.
Yes.
Is the first half of the chapter and the second half of the chapter in the wrong chronological order? Because is that the same well that Hagar found?
Yeah, I'm wondering, that's interesting. Or the other possibility is it may very well be the same well that Hagar found, and maybe the soldiers of Abimelech weren't around it at that time, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Because it does say it was near Beersheba,
Exactly.
where she went, see? And it's talking about Beersheba, even though it's not until later in the chapter. Well, let's just say those two events are probably happening very close together, okay? Yeah, the names sometimes in Genesis and in these early books are applied to a place where the name isn't actually given to the place till later, but it's the name by which everyone would know it, see? So, but that is intriguing, yeah, because it talks about, and she finds this well. It could very well be that was the well that Hagar found.
Mm-hmm.
And So she finds the well, and Abraham now names the place, and he has this wonderful little discussion with Hagar, or with Abimelech, and they come to this agreement that these things should happen. How much time do we have left?
10 minutes.
10 minutes. I don't know if I want to. We could. I don't know. Maybe instead of the next part is the great test of Abraham with Isaac, and I think I would probably, though, I should leave that for Pastor Miller next week. Hopefully Pastor Miller will be back. By the way, I did the same thing, but apparently he did test positive for COVID. So it's around again. Even though it's funny, it's some people, some people get more, they get a run of temperature, they don't feel so good, but it doesn't appear to be raising all of the alarms it did the last time around, because it's less less severe, right? Yeah. That's right. Your dad and your husband.
Oh, yeah.
He had it in the first time, and he passed away from it, right? Yeah. But that was in those early days when it was much stronger kind of thing too. So, but apparently I guess Pastor Miller is okay, except he's just sort of feeling a little bit under the weather, to say the least. So I know several other people who. I have a student in my class at Concordia who wrote me last week and said she wasn't feeling well and went to the clinic, and then they sent her, her heart rate was real high, and they sent her to emergency, and then they found out that she had tested positive too for COVID. Sometimes younger people get that heart rate thing, I think.
Well, they happened to me the November of 2020.
Yeah? Did you have a racing heart kind of thing?
Yeah, I was at like 150.
Wow.
And
So,
then after a little bit, it went down to it was still like 148.
okay.
And
So,
then after, I think like that was around 10. I think after going to the ER, it was me around like midnight or something, or no, in the AM. Eventually it dropped down to like 136.
yeah.
And closer to like 5 in the morning, it dropped down to like 120, and then it was stable. So then they let me go.
Did they test you? Did you have COVID?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So see, that is interesting. That may be something especially with younger people, that they get this heart thing. Some do, not everybody.
Right.
That's the thing. So, well, anyway, the next chapter is, of course, the great sacrifice. Here Abraham has been waiting for this son for all this time, and then he has it, and then God says, sacrifice your son, which would be totally against everything that God ever said about sacrificing people, but he wants Abraham to sacrifice his son, the great test of faith. But we probably, as I said, we only have a few minutes left, and rather than get into that chapter, I think we'll stop here. I should look up, let me look up Beersheba. Beersheba is interesting. And the wells, this is one of those things that happens. Let me do a little searching around on my little computer Bible here, which is a good way to do it.
No.
Search. All I have to do is find out how to search.
We were supposed to leave.
That's not how to search. This is how to search. Search. Well. There's 267 occurrences of the word, well, of course, because the word well can mean all kinds of things. It can mean a well. Yeah, see, that's the problem. Oh, here. This is not the first time. Oh no, here's a well in Genesis 16. Genesis chapter 16, as we're talking about wells, which would make sense, they're in the desert, as you said. So, Genesis 16, verse 14. She gave this name to the Lord who spoke to her. Oh, this is Hagar. Then Sarah mistreated Hagar, and Hagar misflees already when she has the child. Right after the child is born. And then the angel of the Lord found Hagar. There's the angel of the Lord again, finds Hagar near a spring in the desert. It was the spring that is beside the road to Shur. And why have you come here? I'm running away from my mister. Go back to your mistress. I will so increase your descendants. And the angel of the Lord also said to her, you are now with child, and you will have a son, and you shall call him Ishmael, for the Lord has heard of your misery. And she gave this name to the Lord who spoke to her. You are the God who sees me. And that is why she called the well Bir Lahai Roi. It is there between Kadesh and Bered. The well means the well of the living God who sees. So, my goodness, so Hagar and wells sort of has things. So here's the first one. This is this one, which is called that. Now, let's see, 13:10. No, that's 16. Show 21 more results in the book of Genesis. Okay, then next we get to the account we had, the well of water. And when Abraham reproved Abimelech about a well, I dug this well, 21:30. And then it's right there where this well is called. Now let's see, do we get a next wall? Another wall, another well in 24. And he made the camels kneel down outside the city wall by the well of water. Oh, that's the well where Rebekah comes, seeking the water. And found there a well of spring water. The herdsmen of Gerar quarreled with Isaac's herdsmen, saying, the water is ours. So he called the name of the well Esek, because they contended with him. And they dug another well, and they quarreled over that one also. So he called its name Sitnah. And he dug another well. My goodness, this is Isaac. He's digging wells all the time. Okay, so wells are very important apparently in the book of Genesis, because they're showing up all over the place. But I was looking for Beersheba. I should look up Beersheba. That's what I should really search for, because I think Beersheba shows up a couple times. Beersheba. Okay, and 21 is Beersheba. 22. It's basically in this point where the well of Beersheba shows up. Okay. And then in Joshua, it shows up again. And from Dan to Beersheba is a phrase that occurs again and again. That's from the northern part of the kingdom to the southernmost part. And so the words Beersheba show up there again and again. Okay. Anyway, it occurs 33 times in the Old Testament. But in this place is where the place is named Beersheba in chapter 21. The well of the seven. Okay. All right. Now we've used up our time. I think you'll have to remind Pastor Miller when you get to the part about the wells, because Isaac apparently has a great time digging wells and naming them and disputing with people over the well. You can imagine was important. Very important. Well, the Lord be with you all, and God bless you today.
Thank you.
And now I will wait for the next service here, which I know is held here.
Yes.
Yeah. Alright. I think of a favorite chicken place.
Oh, it's too early for
I think Golden Chicken might be
Oh, it's almost gone.
Yay.
It was good.
It was very good.
Yeah,
Yeah, thanks again.
thank you for getting that for me.
It was a very good cake, Otto. It was-
Well, it was either that one or I go to Dairy Queen.
Oh, yeah, but then you have to keep
That was
it
one
in
of
the
my
freezer.
so good.
That's the trouble with going there. You gotta keep it in the freezer
Yeah.
there.
It's hard to get it just right, so it doesn't melt.
If
Yeah.
you want to get the cake.
Well, just instead of getting a blizzard one, maybe get a plain one.
Thank you for helping us out, Pastor.
Oh, you're welcome. God bless you.
God bless you, I enjoy your sermons.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think we have to think, when we first think with our sin, and we have to, try to get that out of there.
Yeah, that's
And
right.
Try to get the gospel in.
That's right. It's so important. That's right. That's so
I love
important.
your sermon.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
We absolutely love it. Oh, okay, thank you. Oh, thank you, God. Oh, thank you, Claudia. Have a good day, Lucy.
You too.
And you? Yes, Oh, pardon? Oh, I think we're gonna just sit at home because, Emily's not here, she's doing something else today. So I think.
How was Emily? She was not feeling well on Friday. I don't know how was she doing something else today?
She's doing something with her family today,
Okay.
but I think she's feeling okay. She texted me last night, I think she's okay.
Yeah, because I was supposed to see her at a wedding on Friday.
Oh.
Her son-in-law's, who is the uncle of the person who was married. And so I was supposed to see her at this wedding out near Oconomowoc. But then her daughter Ann and then her son-in-law Dave, they showed up and she wasn't with them. I said, "Where is Emily?" And they said, "Oh, she wasn't feeling good today."
Oh.
And then Annie said she took her to the doctor that morning.
Oh.
But then she apparently must have been, it's good to know that she's feeling better because when I thought, well, maybe she's got COVID. I don't know.
I'll bring the car.
So,
Thank you, Claudia, for doing that.
Oh, yeah, no problem.
so,
Oh, yeah, she didn't say anything to me about it.
no, so she just apparently had, that was sort of interesting. The wedding was one of those, they have those wedding venues, it's an old barn.
Oh.
That's
yeah.
become very popular.
Yeah.
But we had the wedding outside. It was up there on this hill in Waukesha County.
Take care.
Yeah, we'll do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have fun on your birthday.
Yeah, going all with my so-called son,
Oh.
going down from any.
Do you folks have somebody to pick you? How do you get back to Hart Park? Do you have a,
Thank you. I always do.
yeah, how do you get back today?